Hi, Connor, can you hear me?
Okay.
Let's see.
But you're permanently reserved.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ignite 17. I see Connor's on. He's trying to get connected.
Morning, Sarah. Good morning, Kristen. How are you? I'm well. I'm well.
Connor, can you hear me? Good morning. How are you, Connor?
Hey, Megan, good morning.
So far, you're the only one. We'll see if anybody else wants to join us. Oops. There's our scan in. I posted on Facebook. They were still doing it on Zoom this morning. So we'll see who else can chime in. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. Did you have any storm damage last night?
We didn't that I noticed, but I didn't go walking through my yard. I left, this morning. I did notice my dogs were walking gingerly through the wet, grass. So, yeah. How about you?
No, I not that I just a bunch of tree
Yeah.
leaves and sticks
Yeah.
and stuff like
We always have little branches that fall down. We have an old tree on the side of our house. The last two or three storms back, we lost one of the smaller branches, but I don't think we did with this one.
Is this Ignite 17?
17, yes.
Okay.
Ignite 17. This one is the make and receive offers. So we're going to start talking about that and see if anybody else joins us. Okay. We've been slowly getting through. We're on the whole Ignite program. We're on section 17, which is the make and receive offers. Last week, we talked a lot about working with the buyers and sellers. Okay. So once you actually get the buyer and the seller, and you are going to be covering the offer process now, we're going to go over the steps to submit an offer as the buyer's agent and reviewing the offer as the listing agent. Because even though it's the same offer, you have different purposes for those. Different focuses, I guess I should say. Okay, to remind everybody, this is the KW belief system. So part of your code of ethics and being an agent not only is to abide by all the rules and regulations when you're dealing with people and writing offers and taking care of their needs, is to remember this is the philosophy for KW. That we win-win or no deal, meaning even though you're representing the buyer or the seller, you still need to have a collaborative relationship. Both sides need to have a win in order for it to be a deal. You can't, our purpose is not to not be cooperative and not try to find the best, the best route for our clients. You need to have integrity, always do the right thing. Customers always come first. Commitment in all things. Even if the transaction gets difficult, you're committed to see it through to the end. Communication, seek first to understand. Always try to figure out what's going on before you react to a situation, because you may not know what the other side is doing and you may need some more information. Communication is key to getting the information. Creativity, ideas before results. If a transaction is stuck or your client is stuck, try to think outside the box. What's going to get them around this problem? Serenity is coming on. Good morning, Serenity. Teamwork. Together, everyone achieves more. You won't always feel like you're working on a team with your co-op agent on the other side, but you certainly have a team of KW agents around you to support you if you need something or your transaction is having an issue. Our office is very supportive of one another. Trust starts with honesty. If there's something goes wrong, your client does something that you advise them not to, you do something that you forgot to do or whatever, own it, go talk to somebody, figure it out, fix it. Pretending it's not there is not going to help. You've got to be honest with yourself and with your client and figure out that problem and move forward. Equity, opportunities for all. We represent all walks of life here, and we like to work with all types of people. We want to make sure that everybody feels included. And success is results through people. If we're going to be successful agents and help our clients, then we have to be supportive of all the other people in the transaction as well. One person in the transaction struggling, then that could jeopardize things. So it's our job to try to make it successful by working with everybody. So those are just things for all of us as agents to remember, but this is the core values of the KW philosophy. And those are good things to remember when you're even in your day-to-day life. Okay. So part of what we're going to remember to do when we have this belief system for KW is it is part of our culture. So you want to make sure you're applying these different beliefs and philosophies and styles in your transactions with your clients and with your other co-op agents. Very important to remember those things, because that will keep you focused on how to get forward in this transaction, not get stuck in the negativity, because it's easy to get stuck. All right. So briefly, we're going to cover the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the offer process, prepare the offer, write the offer, present the offer, receive and respond to the offer, and then have the recap and ahas about the whole process. And then we're going to talk about your daily success systems and how that's going for you all. Okay. Good morning. It is lunch. Welcome. Come on in. Have a seat. Hey, Steve just walked in, everybody. Stephen or Steve? Stephen. Thank you. We are not casting on the big screen because we've had issues, but if you'll just pull up your Zoom connection, then you can watch on your own computer. Will that work for you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We're talking about offers today, making one and receiving one. So representing the buyer side and talking about what you do if you're representing the seller. Okay, this is another quote from Bo Bennett. I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate, a person or persons into a win-win situation. And I think that's very true, because when you're dealing with real estate transaction, there is a lot of persuading, of encouraging, of saying this is going to be the best route you need to take based on the scenario we're in and based on the the parameters you have, the inspection reports you received, the financial ability you have, what kind of pre-qualifications you have. All those things factor into this sale. So you do have to gracefully persuade people into understanding what they need in this transaction to have a win-win situation, because they may want to do something that they really aren't able to do, and it's your ability to guide them through that. And learning how to gracefully negotiate, because you want to be assertive for your client, but you also don't want to be so aggressive that you offend the co-op agent and all of a sudden you're losing the deal. Do you know how to get onto the Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Where, I will try, I'll
A
do
little
this.
early. No, you're good.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna move next door to Stephen here so we can share screens. There we go. See? One of your biggest skills as a real estate agent you will ever need is to be flexible and a problem solver. So we're just gonna move the computer so we all can see the screen at the same time. Okay, my page is printed front and back, which is lovely to say paper, but it's confusing when you're looking at them. Okay, the offer process. Okay, so the buyer looks at a house, they like the house, they're going to write an offer. And then we'll talk in detail about that. But once you present the offer, the seller responds to the offer in one of three ways. They either counter the offer saying, okay, we like these 5 things you presented, but we want to change this one. And then you, as the agent, have to negotiate those changes. Let's say, I mean, there's so many things you have to look at in an offer, but you offered, 120 and you needed some closing costs and your buyer can only put 2% earnest money down. So your buyer has some limitations. So the seller might come back and say, well, with such small earnest money and you're selling needing closing costs, we need 125,000 for the offer price on the house. So my seller can cover those expenses. So you have to negotiate those values, those money values often is what it typically is at the very beginning. Or it might be that you want a warranty on the home and the seller doesn't want to pay for it. So now they're going to come back and counter offer and say, we'll let you have a warranty, but the buyer has to pay for it. So you're going to have to negotiate those different terms in the offer. That's one scenario of the way seller will respond. Second scenario is they accept the offer as is. They like every condition you put in there, they accept the offer. So now you're going to begin, they do have to sign it. Very important. They can't just tell you they like it. They have to sign it and send it back. Then you're going to begin the entire contract to close process, which we've talked about in previous Ignite sessions. Then the third option the seller has is just to reject your offer. They don't like it. They don't have to tell you why. They just aren't going to accept it. Maybe they have another one that's better. So they accept that one and they reject yours. There's a section of the last page of the offer that says this offer is rejected. And then they sign it. Oh, Stephen, there you are. And so the buyer agent contacts the listing agent to learn more. Don't assume no means no. That is very true. You always want to say, well, why are you rejecting our offer? Well, the other guy offered 125. Well, let me talk to my client. Maybe he'll offer you 130. Let me see if we can win this offer and see what you can negotiate. Just because they want to reject yours doesn't mean that you can't you can't one up the other offer, so to speak, and make yours the better offer. It just depends on the situation. And if there's one thing that's like the seller absolutely won't do, then box number 2, it has to at least be a box number 1 in its present condition. Then you talk to your buyer and say, in order to win this offer, we've got to change our position on the inspections. Are you comfortable with that? And if your buyer does not want to do it, it's their decision. They don't have to change their original offer to make it more competitive. That's okay. But you should always have that opportunity to talk to the other co-op agent and find out why they don't like your offer and see if you're still a player based on your buyer's abilities. And sometimes your buyer can't do anything other than their own offer, and that's just what you're stuck with. Now, it's important to remember these are business transactions. Your client won't think of it that way. They will get very emotional. So it's your job to keep them focused on the transaction, not the emotion. And that is hard. But if you remain calm, reassuring, presence of I'm in control, I'm confident, we've got this managed, that type of communication style will be much more effective with your buyer. Or likewise, if the co-op agent is having a reactionary seller, then if you two as the agents can try to keep the clients calmer, then you're going to be able to manage that transaction better. So communicating not only with the co-op agent, particularly with your client, depending on what you're doing, sometimes you're going back and forth on the texts. The co-op agent, if they've received multiple offers on a home, they are dealing with you and that other agent with that offer and a third agent with this offer because they're all similar and they're trying to figure out which one's going to be best for their seller. And so they're probably in the weeds just as much as you feel like you are. So be mindful of that. And if they don't respond back, 5 minutes, give them 10, don't pester them, so to speak. Your clients are going to be experiencing things like excitement, trepidation, worry, anxiety. They might be feeling very cautious about all this now. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, what did I get myself into? They might also get impatient because these negotiations don't necessarily happen in a few minutes. It might be, well, the seller's out of town. We've got 48 hours till this offer expires. You probably won't hear back from me until tomorrow. That's a long time for a buyer to have to sit there and wait. So it's your job to help kind of keep them calm and focused. So let's talk about real quickly, you submit the offer and the seller agent receives it. Let's talk real quickly about the rules. Who must provide them with contracts and other documents? Do you have to electronically sign documents as soon as you receive them to mark them as received? What do you guys think? No.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. If I submit an offer to the seller, they don't have to sign it saying they got it. The proof is they have the email showing they received it. So that's kind of the receipt, because the sellers, they need time to look at it before they're going to accept the offer and actually sign it as an accepted offer. So when we send things electronically, remember through dotloop, you always have that option when you check the forms you're sending off to the other people for signing and review, always hit attach PDF. And then they also get it as a PDF copy in that email. So that's the receipt of proof that they received it. So you'll have that as an agent on your end when you receive stuff. If they don't send it to you that way, then you make sure you save every email in a folder on your computer so you know the date and time you received those documents. It's important to keep track of that because you do have time limits. If you have 48 hours, well, you need to know that you received it at 7 p.m. because, 49 hours later by 8 p.m. on that second day, it's no longer valid. So you do have to be mindful of the time you receive stuff. So that email will be your key. And then let's see. Remind them that when you set up buyer and seller guides in your KW app, it's a great way to keep your clients in the know on the process from beginning to end. You can use the app to communicate with your clients. You can CC them on all the emails you get. I mean, you just kind of need to decide your style if you'd like to work on your phone or you prefer to work on your computer. But you do need to have a system set up for when you send an offer out, how you track it. And then if you're on the selling side, if you receive offers in, how you track them. So you need to kind of think about how you want to set that up in your own computer and your own, in your own way. And we as coaches can kind of show you how, like I can show you how I have my things set up in Command and dotloop. And I'm a computer person, not as much a phone app person. So you just need to decide what your style is. But the apps also have the ability to save documents and things. I just prefer the computer. That's just my style. And remember, when you get an offer in, you have to put all the offers into Command. That's where they are stored. And if you haven't done that yet with your coach, when you usually don't have that opportunity to do one until you have it in a listing. When you receive offers in, they go into Command because they become part of how you get paid in the end. That offer and those final numbers are what our office uses to calculate your paycheck.
They go into Command to dotloop, right?
Well, in this
They're going
case,
through Command to
right,
save them in your loop,
right.
right?
Then, yes. And then as a listing agent, when you get an offer in, it's going to go into dotloop first. That other agent's going to send it back to you via dotloop typically. Sometimes they'll send it just directly as an email. Then you have to take those documents and make sure they're in dotloop, and then you're going to upload them back into Command. It kind of goes cyclical. Your documents go from Command into dotloop, but then when you receive them from another co-op agent, they come into dotloop, then you have to put them back into Command. So you just have to be mindful of who's sending and who's receiving and make sure you take care of that. Yep. All right. Okay, so prepare to write an offer. Remember, your relationship with the listing agent began on your first contact. So normally, if you're going to write an offer on a house, you've already called that other listing agent and said, hey, my client's really interested in your home. Do you have any other offers yet? Oh, you already have one. Can you give me any idea? Do we need to come in over asking? That's kind of the first thing you want to know. How high are they offering? Oh, they're right at list price. Okay, thank you. I mean, just whatever information they're willing to share with you at the beginning. Some agents are very comfortable giving you their terms. Other agents like to be a little more private. They like to kind of wait and see what comes in, and then everybody's got their own style on how they like to negotiate. So don't be offended if you don't get a lot of information, and be pleased when you do get a lot of information. I mean, you can't control that. So if you've never worked with an agent before, which since you all are newer, you probably have not had the opportunity to work on a transaction with the same agent yet. They likely, okay, if you've never have worked with them before, this was likely when you made the appointment. When you contact them prior to writing the offer, you are building a positive working relationship. Be courteous and professional in your inquiries. Because things change. Your client's so excited and they say, I want to do this, this, and this. And you call the other co-op agent and you're chatting about it. And an hour later, your client's like, oh, well, this other house came on the market. I think I want to go see it now. I'm like, oh, crap. Always call that agent back and say, so sorry, my client wants to see another home now, but we may be submitting an offer later today or tomorrow. I'll definitely keep you posted. Because, you don't know. Things change, but always communicate with them. Because people are wouldn't you like to know that just happened? It's so helpful when the co-op agents communicate with us. By the time we get to the offer phase, obviously we have to represent our client's interest always, but part of it is making sure we can work well with that other co-op agent. Good morning. It's important to ask questions of the listing agent to discover what's important to the seller so the buyer's agent can write that offer that meets their needs. So when you go through the offer, you're going to have to think about, there's sections to the offer. And when we do this in Wednesday Night Warriors, we go through these. Not only do you have your price, I didn't print one off to have in front of me, but you've got like your closing date and the date how the kind of inspections you want to do, what kind of loan you have, and whether or not you're going to have an appraisal or not. And so there's different terms in those contracts that you have to think about, and you can ask the co-op agent, well, when does your client need to move? Well, we have to be out by June 1. Well, that's very nice to know. We don't want to say we're going to make you wait until June 7th and to close on the house. You need to close before June 1. You try to meet their needs if your buyer is able to. How you doing? Regina just joined us.
Got back from showing.
All right, most listing agents on the MLS will tell you how they want to receive the offer. It's in the notes for the agents. And it says, send it via .loop, send it via email, send it via whatever. So be mindful of that. Not everybody uses .loop. Some of them want you to take your documents out of .loop and send them directly to them as PDFs to a different, to a different email or whatever.
And
So just
that's-
look at that.
That's usually where?
It's on the MLS. There's a section underneath all the information about the house. There's a section for the agent to agent notes, and it'll be in there instructing you on special terms that they have for this transaction.
Okay.
Like it's being sold as is. They want everything to, come to their, directly to them as a PDF, or they do want everything through .loop, or
Don't use that.
don't use .loop. I mean, so if they don't want to use .loop, then you take your documents save them as PDFs, so they're not coming from .loop. Put them in a folder on your computer, then just send them through your own email instead of using .loop as the email source.
And sometimes they'll have how to submit an offer attached to where the supplements are.
Yes, always look in the supplements because
I've seen that.
they're looking for the seller's disclosure and the lead-based paint disclosure and maybe another franchise disclosure. In addition, on that listing, there might be offer instructions from that other agent saying these are the things you need to know to submit an offer. So always print that off and follow those instructions, because that's going to make that agent happy if you're doing it the way they would like. So those things are pretty easy. And if you're not sure, just call the agent and say, hey, do you want, I'd like to put an offer in. Do you want me to send it through .loop, or do you have another means you prefer? If they haven't put anything on the MLS, I always
I've
check
seen
with them
in,
first.
Open houses that I've covered, it's like a page on the counter of the house, it's got some
Mhm.
disclosure, and then it's got how to do an offer.
Yes,
Like
I
it's-
always put
it's
offer instructions
is
on
that
mine too.
Typical?
Yes, it's courteous.
To create something like that?
It's not typical, but I don't know, what, 50% of the time?
My TT does it for me.
Yeah,
So-
I just have an offer sheet and I always post mine.
So I want to make sure that everybody's connecting with my transaction coordinator.
Yes, and they've got the right phone numbers and the right client, because on your offer instructions, you tell them who the seller is, what the address is. I mean, you're reminding them of all the things about that transaction, so they've got the right spellings and things like that.
Mhm.
You know, what your buyer's name is and all those things they're gonna need to know. All right. Okay, now gets really tricky and remember, we all have to go take the new Missouri requirement class on fair housing. But remember, you have to avoid questions that violate fair housing, not give away information that would violate fair housing. And Regina, give me an example of that. Let's think here real quick. What would be a fair housing issue that you can't ask the co-op?
Oh,
Because it's gender, race, religion, familial status.
so like I mean,
It gets really
like
complicated.
what you can't ask the listing agent?
Yeah, sorry, Jeremy and I have a little powwow here because this says remind them to avoid questions that would be a violation of fair housing when you're talking to the co-op agent.
Well, generally, the number one question is, why are they moving? Is like, everybody wants to know that. I
Yeah.
don't know why that matters,
Yeah.
but,
Mm-hmm.
uh.
Yeah.
So I don't think,
But those
Is it-
are violations,
No,
right?
exactly. I don't know that it,
I mean, I guess if somebody was really weird about, like, if they went in and they seen something,
well, I have an experience. I honestly, I had a little house in Independence I sold. We got like a dozen offers. My client, the seller, saw the name of one of the people, submitting an offer and said, "Oh, I don't want some Asian person buying my house." Right off the boat, she used the term Chinese, assuming they were Chinese. And I said, well, that's not how it works. You have to be able to sell your home to whoever wants to move into it.
Mhm.
You can't discriminate against them based on their race.
that's not a question though that you'd ask the listing.
Well, no, but this was a comment I got, and so that crossed my mind. Your clients will have fair housing issues all the time because of their own background. Not all the time, but sometimes. So you'd have to be mindful of those things
Mhm.
and kind of navigate them through that. And we actually ended up taking that offer. It ended up being the best offer. And I said, I
You
think,
do have to report it
Yeah.
if they make that comment and then didn't take that offer, you have to report it.
Yeah.
And you almost have to recuse
recuse
yourself
yeah,
of the transaction.
Yeah.
So if your buyer or seller make a fair housing
yeah, that's a violation.
violation,
Yeah.
you have to report it and
Yeah.
then step down, or you're just as guilty as they are. if you
Right.
go along with it.
Yeah.
Like, let's say they don't want either way, either a buyer, or a seller, if they think that they're a gay couple, let's say,
Mhm.
oh,
and
two
they-
guys on this
Yeah.
contracts.
They want to be
They
biased.
start
and-
asking questions or vice versa, like seller.
Yep, that's a
Right.
violation of fair
So
housing
you have
laws. If you can't,
When do you,
I don't know, I've
when
never,
do you report that? I
Well, it
mean,
would
what do
basically,
you,
like, so if you're on the listing side, right? And your seller makes a comment, so like I had a seller not want to sell to a single woman. And I said, well, you can't do that, and I said, I'm a single lady and I've bought multiple homes and probably, I said, take really good care of, what I'm saying,
right,
everywhere I've lived, even when I was a renter. Now, had he not taken her offer, I would have needed to report that because he violated it. As soon as he made that statement, he violated it. And if that was why he wasn't going to do business with her, then I would have to report it and then
take yourself out?
take myself out.
How do you do that?
You'd report it to the, MLS.
Yeah, but how do you take yourself out?
You'd have to cancel your contract.
Okay,
which is the only way you protect yourself.
Yeah.
right.
So that
right.
kind of information doesn't come back and say, oh, well, Stephen's client said he wasn't selling to gay people and Stephen didn't do anything about it.
Right, and so is there a document?
At that point, you just reach out to your broker and have your.
Yeah,
broker, like,
okay.
I don't know.
Like,
Like,
if you,
Those
at that
are-
point, it's like, hey, Lynn,
Yeah,
yeah,
this comment was made, I'm saying.
get advice, right?
Let me know, or
Yeah.
call the MLS and say, hey, they have attorneys, and you ask them,
hi, Dominic.
Yeah,
You would seek advice first because every case is unique.
Not agent to agent advice, go straight to your broker, or go straight to the MLS. and
Yeah.
say, hey, this is what happened, it's a fair housing violation, how should I proceed?
Right.
Is this
Good morning,
one?
Dominic. How are you?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Welcome.
All right, let's go over what's on the screen real quick, just to make sure, these are important things to be mindful of. So you might take a picture of this or write these down. Make sure you always, before you write an offer, you call the agent and make sure the property is still available. They might have another offer they already signed and they just haven't posted a pending yet, and you're wasting your time. Build a rapport with the listing agent. Inquire about activity. Have you had other offers? How many, did they have a lot of showings? What's going on? Because that's helpful to know. Inquire about the other offers on the property status. If they did get some and why did they fall through? Like I said, some agents will share all this information with you, some won't, but these are things to think about, kind of questions to ask. Ask about the seller's motivations and their needs. Why do they need to move? Any special things they need in order to make this transaction happen? Ask the listing agent how they want to receive the offer. We just talked about that, dot loop or email or whatnot. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval from the lender. And you can't submit an offer without that pre-approval. I think everyone knows that. Review your MLS and tax records to make sure that the listing agent may not have the right information on MLS. So you go out to Realist, look at those tax records yourself and make sure you know how much the taxes are for this house for your client. And if there's any lien sitting on it, just obvious things that you can see on those sites. Produce a comparative market analysis for your client to make sure that the offer price you're going to submit is what should be happening in that neighborhood. It's a fair price. And then get the seller's disclosure off MLS and any other documents that are on MLS that your client might need to sign. You have to pull all those off as a PDF and then dump them into dot loop. And then add the signature lines and little initial spaces and all that so your client can sign them and then have them ready to submit with the offer. Okay?
Hey,
Any
Megan.
questions on that?
Yeah, Megan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I know you're supposed to verify the title of the house. Where would you go to do that? I guess the title or you would call the title company to verify that they actually own the house.
Yes. Well, Realist, when you go to Realist, it will give you the name of the current owner on the home.
But I'm doing
Okay.
an offer, and the person on the tax record is not the person I'm making the offer on. So I think an investor has bought the property and it hasn't been recorded yet.
Hasn't been recorded yet.
And the only reason I knew that is because there was no supplements. And so I reached out to the listing agent and was like, hey, I'm putting an offer together. I need to know like the marital status of your seller. And it
Mhm.
ended up being an investor, not the seller.
Not the seller. Okay, well, that's good. So in that case, yes, Connor, if that's the case and you're not sure and the listing agent's answer wasn't satisfactory, I would call your title company, our local one here, Platinum, and just ask them to run a quick check on it. Say, who actually owns this house right now?
But once you go under contract, they'll do a title commitment.
Yeah, they'll do that search for
Yeah,
you.
so so that's why the title commitment's so
Yeah.
important.
And if there's something, if what they discovered during that title search is different from the paperwork, then you all can go back and amend that paperwork to make it match if you want to continue with that offer. That's why we use those amendment forms. They're ways to fix, like if the name's incorrect, you can adjust that.
And if you're on the listing side and you're like talking to the seller and you're like, this just seems kind of messy, right? So like I had the messiest house ever. And it didn't have clear title. So it was listed and then expired. And then I reached out to the previous listing agent, said, hey, what happened with this deal? You know what I'm saying? You had the house, it was in beautiful condition. He's wanting to sell it now and it's just tanked. And she told me there was a lot of title issues with the property. So you can have a preliminary title ran.
Mhm.
You have your sellers do that with title if you think there's if it's going through a divorce or if there's like child support issues or if you have any red flags that you're like, this is gonna be kind of a messy transaction. Then I would go ahead and have a prelim title done because when you list your
Who
sellers.
does that?
Title.
The title company. Yeah, you can pay them a fee to run a
Okay.
title search for you before you even put the house on MLS, so you know what you're dealing with if there's any questions.
Because when you list it, you're telling the public that you can provide clear title. And if you can't provide clear title, then you have an obligation to make that upfront because nobody wants to spend money on inspections and stuff like that to find out that the person can't sell the house.
Right.
Because there's a tax lien or something like that on it. So where mine, like I had the preliminary and it was like, okay, there's all these, you know, and there's ways to get around that, like you can do quiet titles, you can do that kind of stuff, but that stuff, whoever buys it is gonna have to take it quit claim because they're not gonna get a title insurance policy. And they're gonna have to figure out if that is a risk that they're willing to take.
Yeah. And sometimes the attorneys are involved on those kind. I did a lot of transactions like that when I worked in the probate
Mhm.
field because older people wouldn't pay their taxes. There'd be a tax lien or there'd be a bankruptcy or some issue and that it would be connected to the house, or they'd have a Medicaid lien. And so the attorney would, and you can get an investor to buy that kind of property. You just have to have the attorney make sure everything gets paid off on the other end. Then the investor can come out and own the home again. But there's just a different process to it.
And some investors will take risks on that kind of stuff if they're gonna hold the property, because a
Right.
lot of that stuff will fall off in 10 years.
Exactly.
But that's a risk.
In 10 years,
It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So-
yeah, so, and that's it, their risk to take, but you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying, if they're know that upfront, and that's a risk that they choose to take.
Right.
Then,
But that's
so
what.
other than doing a title search,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way for an individual that can research that. Like there's no,
Well, if you want to sit on the county records and
Government.
trying to figure it out on your own, but you know, like
And then
I know
there's
how to do
land
that.
bank, Go out
but-
to land bank, I know they had, I don't know, but like, and usually it'll tell you if there's something like the land bank a little bit.
probably better.
But it's
just-
better not to be the expert there, right?
No, I would,
Right,
I would want to
right.
rely on the title company's expertise. And other things, I'm glad you brought that up, Connor, if you think there's a problem with title, other things to be mindful of when you're, before you're listing it to know what situation that home has. Make sure you know if it's in a floodplain or not. Which is, you can get information in the county. Most people are not, but you know, sometimes if they live on a big hill and they're at the bottom of the hill, you might, you know,
Is
think
that
about
on the
that.
Seller's disclosure.
Yeah, it should
Supposed
on
to
the
be.
tax record.
Should be on the tax records too.
And then they should have it, like, they should know, because their insurance is higher, right?
Yeah,
So when they got the property, they would have had to do a rider on it.
yes.
And so they should know if they're financially responsible.
Mhm.
But if you're not sure and you have a hunch that maybe it is in a floodplain, then just go check it out on your own. Call the county and find out before you list it. Make sure you check out if there's a local HOA. Some of them are nominal. They don't do much. There's $100 fee, if any, for the year. Others are, you don't call and get the right, you know, size fence post, you're violation. You're in violation. So, yeah, my mother lives in that kind of neighborhood. So you need to be mindful of that, and many HOAs have HOA docs, Connor's laughing at that, have HOA docs, and you can get a copy of those, and you can post that on the MLS too. Say, here are the HOA restrictions for this neighborhood. Particularly for townhomes and condominiums, you want to get a hold of those HOA docs, because they have specific restrictions sometimes. And the buyer needs to know that going into it.
Yeah, so like I've shown somebody houses and they have 2 dogs. Well, we looked at one, HOA and you can only have 1 dog.
Yeah,
So that, you know, it wasn't a good property.
right.
for her.
They're just not gonna work out.
And then if somebody's buying it because they want it to be a potential investment later, you need to make sure that there's no rental restrictions, and if there is a rental restriction, is there a grandfather clause?
Yep.
That would allow them to still, you know, if that's their, long-term intention,
Mhm.
is to live there and potentially make it a rental, if there's a HOA on it, you know.
Yeah, that precludes that. And if you're buying condominiums in Jackson County, Missouri, particularly Midtown, downtown, you need to definitely check out the HOA restrictions, and you need to check out the assessments sitting on a building. Many of them have assessments on them, and your buyer needs to know that because they're going to be, they often absorb that assessment depending on the terms of the assessment. The assessment is when a building like the Western Auto Building downtown needs a new roof. Well, it's a historical building and the roof is, I don't know, 2.5 million or whatever, some ridiculous amount of money. I had a client a couple of years ago looking at a condominium in there. The assessment says that each owner of a condo is going to pay their proportional value of that roof installment when that comes due. And so that was going to be like $36,000 for this particular condo because it's based on the square footage of the condos. And my client said, I don't want to be responsible for that in the future. It's like, well, then don't buy it. So you need to be mindful of those. A lot of those old condo buildings have assessments on them. So something to think about. Yes.
Another way for the city to get some money.
Yeah. All right, writing an offer. These are the things that you're gonna have to consider when you put it into the offer. Now, obviously, the contract itself has all these sections in it, but we're just gonna kind of briefly talk about them. The price and the terms. You need the seller's disclosure. Conveyances, what we were just talking about with the title company. There's any issues with the title or any restrictions on the property. Maybe they have, a common alley in the back of the property. So you need to make sure that your buyer knows that everybody gets access to the alley to drive up and down, or whatever that issue might be. Or they share a driveway, so you're gonna have to make sure that your buyer is willing to do that. You need to know those things. What kind of earnest money can your buyer afford? Due diligence and the inspection period. You normally have 10 days. Is that gonna be enough time? Can you get done quicker? There's gonna be an issue up front because, half of the roof's falling in. I mean, you just need to be prepared for these different phases of the offer process. Time for the seller acceptance. Do they need a regular close, a quick close? Do they need an extended close? They can't get out of there for 2 more months because kids are still in school or whatever their needs are. You need to know your financing terms. So you need that buyer pre-approval letter. And the pre-approval letter is very helpful because it tells you the amount that they can borrow up to, but you also need to ask that lender for all their fees and closing costs because every lender is different. And you need to know, like right now, my buyer has $10,000 in the bank and her closing costs are almost $8,000. Well, that only leaves her $2,000 for a down payment. So I got a problem. So we're looking at different types of homes now, a little bit lower price point, or I'm going to have to get my sellers to pay some of her closing costs because she's got a unique situation and has all these fees on the FHA. So you need to know that stuff up front because I can't write an offer where she's going to put a full 3% down because it doesn't leave her enough cash for her closing costs. So you've got to know on your side what your buyer's needs are before you present an offer.
So what if somebody's coming in with cash only?
Mhm.
They, huh?
They don't include costs.
They'll have minimal closing costs. You just have the title fees, which are
But do
$1,500.
they, on the offer,
Mhm.
they don't, do they have to prove that they have the funds?
Absolutely, yes.
And
you
how do you prove that you have?
You need to
Just
show
from
them
the
a
bank?
bank statement or the CD, and you need to see that the cash out date is prior to the closing date, so you know they have access to the money. Or if it's like my railroad guy has all of his money tied up in his railroad pension, but he can withdraw funds from it. So I had the railroad people send me a letter saying, yes, Jerry can withdraw $160,000 by X date. I'm like, great. You just need something to prove that that money is there for the transaction.
Like I have an investor and he's just super private,
Yeah.
which if I would probably be that way, too. He just gets his bank to write him a letter.
Yep.
That says, he has this, enough of money in his accounts that would cover a purchase of property in the amount
Yeah.
of.
Which is adequate. Some people send their bank statement, which I hate. Make sure you block out their number, their bank account number at least, but it's proof that the money's there. But you don't, because that's gonna be, it floats around in computer land. So you want to protect people's investments too. Don't disclose only what you need to.
If you know that people say, well, just because I have $1 million in the bank account, I don't want to pay full price. You know
Well,
what I'm saying? Like, I
exactly.
wanna pay
Yeah.
$50,000.
Yeah, you still want your negotiation abilities. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So.
So, and then time for the seller acceptance versus the closing date, typically those are kind of in conjunction with each other. If the seller can't move, until June 1, then you need to, if your buyer can, try to accommodate that. Find out if your buyer wants a home warranty or not, if the seller's offering one. Repairs. If there are repairs, what kind of this, you negotiate this with the listing agent, the co-op agent. What's the seller willing to cover? But they have a dollar amount, they can only go up so high. Or they're willing to split it 50-50 or kind of what's the seller's comfort level with repairs. Special clauses, you don't see very much. Maybe that would be like if there's an assessment on a building or the county is going to be doing a project and that like in our neighborhood, they came in and they tore out the bottom 4 feet of our driveways to put in the new streets and curbs. Well, you needed to disclose that to the future buyer because, your yard's going to be torn up for half a year. And then you have to decide what you're doing with the rest of your driveway. And, you know, so just, if there's anything special about that transaction that other people would need to know, you want to include that. And then if there's any change to an offer, you, as you're going through, you use the addendum to make any changes. Because it's not a final contract yet. You're still in offer phase until everything's done and negotiated and everybody signs off on it. An amendment is a document used to amend an already signed contract. Just so, and an addenda, you're adding information to a offer in process. So maybe if that makes sense. Now we got a happy birthday song going on behind us. Hold on a second.
So is there an offer form
Oh, yes.
in our choices
Yes, it's called the
That
real
has-
estate contract for sale. Mhm.
and that has all of this?
It has all those different
If you're
sections.
just
and
sending an email, if their instructions just send me an email, we would put this,
Yeah, we also,
break this down.
yes, and there, KW, we also in our power tools, we have a form for you all about how to write an offer and everything you need to make sure you do. So your offer is compliant. So if you follow those steps, and of course your coach will help you with that, but yeah, we have lots of tools for you to use, Stephen, that'll guide you through this process. Because this is a list, it's not necessarily in the order you would be doing it. This is just the things you need to
Yeah.
make sure you have, you don't forget. But there is a process to it, yes. All right. I'm,
Those forms are on
mhm.
that is in the Facebook.
Some of those forms are already loaded up onto the Facebook tools. If they're not,
Like how to write an offer.
like how to write an offer and ways to work with a buyer, I believe that one's already there. And then next, if you remind me, tomorrow night, Wednesday Night Warriors, I have all the power tools on my own computer, so I can email you anything you want
Oh, okay.
also, okay? Just ask me. We don't do this much anymore, but you guys are gonna hear this term, and my notes are asking me to remind you of this. Some buyers like to submit love letters, why they would love to buy that
Oh,
house.
I've seen it.
We discourage that. NAR particularly discourages it, and after this settlement comes down, probably aren't gonna be able to do that at all, because it is just the potential for violating fair housing laws are ripe. When you're saying, oh, I love your house because X, Y, Z, it's this reason, that reason, or whatever. And so we just highly discourage wanting your buyers to do it and having your sellers even consider it, yeah, even look at it. You don't want to get in that predicament.
Because they are truly based off of like, oh, our kids would be able to walk to school and,
We love the fact that the Catholic Church is so close
Close,
by. I
yeah.
mean, you get into all the issues of fair housing, which are religion, race, familial status, like the gay couple, things that you want to avoid. You don't want those conflicts mentioned, in writing on a love letter.
Mhm.
So just, I don't even let my clients know they can even do that. It used to be much more common. I think we've definitely gotten out of the practice of it now.
It's really just about highest price, that's all people.
Exactly.
It's so competitive.
They
It's
don't
like,
care. They
Yeah.
just want all the money in the world.
And that's
all they
basically what
care
this
about.
is saying.
right.
The reason why you love their
I have
house
5
isn't
offers. I'm
important,
taking
but yeah,
the
the-
easiest and
right.
the largest.
the price and the terms. I mean, that's the bottom line is, is it a good price for your seller and is it terms that they can deal with?
Yeah,
That's really like you said, the bottom line. Okay. Okay, here, see, Stephen, it exists. This is the KW Power Tool,
read it.
ready to make an offer. Well, it's on the Facebook, I think it's on our launch page.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I have it in a PDF, I could send it to you, but it tells you step by step, everything you need to remember to do. And then, now, most every transaction will have every single one of these scenarios. If your client doesn't need to be pre-approved because they have cash, then you're gonna stick in proof of cash letter versus pre-approval letter. So but most of them have all of these things. Occasionally, you'll have a newer home you're selling is built after 1978, so you don't need the lead-based paint disclosure. But most of the time you do. In our community, we have lots of old homes.
This is the same page as we use to do our mock offers.
Yes, it
right?
is. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you're working with a builder,
Yep.
then you use their forms and you don't even use our forms. So you reach
Right.
out to the builder and they usually will fill everything out for you.
Yeah. And then obviously a reminder to attend Linda's contract classes, because she goes over all these things for the contracts class on how to write an offer. All this stuff is discussed. That's a good place to get some additional information. Then we have this ready to offer checklist. We're trying to help you avoid the mistakes where it screams you're a rookie. For example, if they ask for 30-day inspection time, would that be standard in your area or ridiculous? Anybody know?
Reasonable time.
What's the standard time in
Huh?
the
Isn't it
contract?
7 days, 7 or 10 days?
10
10.
days is standard
Yeah.
in the contract we use here at KW.
But 10 can be.
10
A lot.
It can be a lot, yeah,
Yeah,
but that's the standard,
Calendar days.
10 calendar days, not
So
business
If you're
days.
writing an offer on a Friday, you pretty much burned up 2 of your days.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. So if you're like, hey, I'm gonna do a 3-day inspection period, you essentially burned up 2 of your days
Mhm.
with Saturday and Sunday. So,
Hmm.
or like if a holiday's coming up, like Memorial Day, and those are usually the worst days to close, like closing right after a holiday. Everybody's chaotic and titles, got a lot coming in and stuff like that. So you want to kind of watch your calendar when
Hmm.
you're picking your closing date
Mhm.
to kind of avoid any of those things.
Yeah, don't close on Tuesday after Memorial Day, and I never like to close on a Friday, because if you do have an issue, it's Friday afternoon, you can't fix it.
Or the people have to wait until Monday.
Monday to get it fixed, and you have to do extensions on your closes and all that stuff, and
Versus just maybe one day of like, hey, we can get this fixed and you can be in the house tomorrow versus, hey, we don't even know if we can get this fixed and you'll have to figure something out until Monday.
yeah, so I don't recommend Friday closes. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are better, if you can. All right, this is hard to see, but you guys can print this off. It just goes through all the little things. And if you notice, a lot of this mimics what was on that other slide before. Do they need a home warranty? What's the closing date? What's the earnest money gonna be? Additional inclusions, the other one said special addenda or some special clauses. Is there something unique about this house that we need to know? You want to make sure you disclose it up front. Things you'll need to know to fill out the sales contract. You need the legal names of your buyers. I had this, my very first investor I ever worked with, his name's Jerry. He's still one of my best clients. His name is actual Gerald. It is not Jerry. We signed every single document, Jerry. And we had to go back and fix all the documents to say Gerald. So ask them what their legal name is. What's on your driver's license? That's the name you want on all the contracts. They have to match their legal paperwork.
But in Missouri, your driver's license can be different than your legal name. So.
This drives me nuts. Well, and this guy was an investor and he had an LLC. I said, who's buying this house? The LLC. What name's on that LLC?
is that
That's the
new?
name that's going on our
Is that
paperwork.
new?
Yeah,
Is that new?
where you can have a different name on your driver's license, which is silly.
Cause I had,
Needs
his
to-
name was, he went by Albert and his real name is Thomas.
That makes no sense to me. Your driver's license should be your legal identity. It should be the name that, you have to,
And his, all his
Sign everything
information is like that.
I just think that's
Mhm.
silly.
Even
but-
on his driver's license, so I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah. You'll need the legal names of the sellers. It says find it in the MLS under the tax records. That would be a good place to start. Make sure you got the right legal description. Always go compare the legal description that the agent put on the MLS to the one recorded at the county record. Because if there's a typo, then that can be a big problem when you're trying to get to the title company. Make sure you have all the MLS supplements. You make sure you understand your financing terms and that your client can actually afford all the money that they're going to be managing. Like I said, I've got a conflict right now with the down payment need and the closing cost need. My client doesn't have enough cash for both. So I've got to be clever and figure out how to protect her. You must mark what is the listing agency's role. You find out on the MLS, on the property sheet. Okay. Yeah, are they like an exclusive agent? Are they working with another agent where they're the sub agent and the other guy's the lead agent? And that's all disclosed on there because you need to be able to put that on that second to last page on the contract identifies you. We're typically designated buyer agents in our office. Are they a designated seller's agent or do they have a different role? You need to know that because you have to mark the right box. So then you just ask the listing agent if it's,
People don't know what they're doing.
yeah.
I think-
And if it's not,
I think one of our houses one of our mock houses for Wednesday had
Oh my gosh, it's almost time for the
like a
business meeting.
cellar.
All right, so this is gonna take more time. We're gonna have to come back and revisit all this on Thursday, but we'll wrap up quickly. So present the offer checklist, double check all documents, all instructions, label all documents, order documents logically. Yeah, you want like the contract to come in first, then you want, the lead-based paint, then you want them to kind of be in order of importance when you're submitting things, that you don't want the contract to be like the last thing the agent gets.
And is
you know,
there a
just think-
list
well,
somewhere?
Kind of, yeah.
But
In command,
Helps
it
us.
tells you which ones are important because they're at the top and required. Then as they get down the list, they're
Okay.
less important. So I would follow that strategy. Make sure you put all your documents in command once you're done with everything from dot loop. Once you have a signed offer, then all that information has to get into command within 5 days and you have to submit it to compliance. They don't want it sitting there for weeks and they're not processing paperwork. Particularly if you have a quick close, if you have a 3-week close, our office has to start processing paperwork. Title company has to start processing paperwork. I mean, everybody's got to move quickly. So you need to get that disseminated to everybody as soon as possible. Other things to be mindful of, make sure your offer is complete. If you do forget something, send it over the minute you realize you didn't send it off. You want receipt of the offer from the other agent. Let them ask them, hey, I sent my offer, did you get it? They either do it via email or via text. Email's better because then you can keep the email saying yes, no, you have all your proof that stuff happened. If you have an email, you can keep. Create an executive summary. I'll show you guys this in Wednesday Night Warriors one night. I always have a spreadsheet I make. So as my offers come in, I mark down what offer has which terms because you just cannot keep it all in your head. There's just no way. You need to make sure if you're the listing agent selling the house, once you accept that offer, call that buyer agent, start talking about XYZ. What are we doing next? Which title company we're working with? We've got to get the lender involved, make sure you're getting information to all the people who need it. And then outline document references when you call the sellers. This is that contract to close checklist we've talked about. You're going to be doing all those things as you go through. If the buyer's agent is responsible for all of those, but you as the selling agent need to make sure that the buyer is doing all those things. So I'm monitoring that the whole time as well. Because there can be a glitch. What if they have an appraisal problem on their end and we have, it delays us or whatever's going on? You need to know what's going on in that process and be monitoring it the whole time. All right. So we're back to that slide. You can counter offer, you can accept the offer, you can reject it. We talked about that on the earlier slide. We're going backwards now. Oh, we are going backwards. Sorry, guys. That's why. It's like we already did all that. Nope.
This is slide deck.
These are the notes for the slides. Yep. You're welcome to look through those.
Use restroom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can. Let me see if it has any homework. Okay, we're going to continue this on Thursday. Talking about the offers and how to negotiate one and just the different all the different terms come into play. And don't forget, Brett, in addition to Linda's contract classes, Brett has classes on how to use command and how to use dot loop and how to make sure all these documents are interfacing. So attend his command tech classes if you can also, okay? Connor, it was lovely seeing you this morning. We're all going to run off to the business meeting. Have a good day.
All right, see you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you uploading this to Facebook?
We do not typically put these instructors' notes on Facebook.
No, not but the actual slide deck, the presentation you just did.
No, we don't upload those on
We don't
Facebook.
upload.
But you can get into,
We just put the video recordings on.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It will be up there later. Yeah.
Later on today.
I don't know how quickly Kristen puts those up. But soon I can ask her.
Because I know they, since we no longer use Facebook anymore. I know it's not as important.
Yvette figured a workaround to that problem where we can use Facebook Live and circumvent their system. But she sent Kristen the instructions this morning, so we've got to get it set up on our end so we can start doing that. So maybe by Thursday, we'll be back on Facebook. That would be nice. Because then those recordings just stay there automatically. We don't have to worry about
Yeah, and so
uploading later.
just
Yeah,
makes it easier to go
much
back
easier.
and
Yeah,
review. It's like, I feel like a lot of the information that we have is extremely valuable, but it's also like on different platforms. You gotta try to find.
I know. Yep. Yeah, and if you can't be here in person, that makes it really challenging. I know. So we'll resolve that problem for you. And then we're gonna start, Ignite goes through session 20, and then we'll start it again. Remember, if it's like the end of July or 1st of August, whatever. So any of them you want to revisit, you can always come back and sit in on again.